What do you do when your offensive line is getting smoked like that?
Yeah.
And you've got the best quarterback in the league running for his life. What what should Andy Reid have done? What did he not do or try that he could have?
Hindsight being 2020, and the fact that the game was still in doubt. I mean, it didn't get blown out until the end of the half, right? Even when it was 17-0 and the Chiefs had the ball, you're like, hey, if they go down and get a score here, they get the ball at the half, dude, Kansas City's not going to panic here. I think where it got away from them was they never attempted to run the ball. And they knew going in their run game was trash, and it hasn't been very good. But I'm a little shocked that they never made an attempt to run the ball at all. So when you do have a team that is just pinning the ears back and coming, full speed up ahead, you would think that you would like to try to slow that down a little bit with the run game. I think if you were to go back and ask Andy Reid at the beginning, I think he would have tried to work in some more play action stuff. I mean, they just went out of the gun the entire time and basically told Philadelphia, we're not going to run the ball. And to be one-dimensional against that team, that's a bit of a death sentence. I think the other thing that they could have done was, I was surprised that eventually they didn't move Tooney back inside and play one of the tackles, because then at least you only would have had one bad position, because what you had was the backup left guard who was just getting annihilated, and then you had your left tackle who was your left guard, who was a really, really good left guard. He might have, believe it or not, he might have played a worse game than the Caliendo or whatever, the guy that's
Mike
left guard.
Caliendo, yeah.
Tooney might have actually played a worse game. So sometimes when you reshuffle your O-line, instead of having one bad problem, you end up with two bad problems. And so what they were trying to do was they were trying to help out the right side and just leave the left side alone, and it ended up causing three separate problems. So I think what happened was Kansas City tried to fill, like when the dam starts leaking, you were trying to fill the holes with your thumbs and you were filling the wrong holes. So they kept trying to protect the right side of the line, and it wasn't working because just everyone was getting beat. I mean, the only two players that had a good game was the center and the left guard. And the other thing that I think you could have seen Kansas City do, and I think they waited too long, was they had to take some shots downfield. And you saw once the game was out of hand, some of that stuff over the top was there with Xavier Worthy taking some of those shots downfield. But Kansas City has basically thrived all year on the underneath stuff. Problem is that when you only rush 4 and you play that they played, I don't get super technical, but the Eagles basically played one coverage the entire game. They played quarters. So each guy takes a fourth of the field, and then you play really tight zone underneath. And there was nowhere to go with the ball. And so Kansas City is not a deep play offense at all. They have lived on the underneath stuff. Think Tom Brady during his runs. But you would see Mahomes go back and he would go to throw the ball quickly, and you sound like he wouldn't get rid of the ball because there was nowhere to go. You had to get Philadelphia to move out of that coverage and get them to extend their defense. And once it was over, you saw them throw the ball downfield a little bit. I think they should have tried that a little bit earlier on to try to soften it up. The problem with that is,
you gotta wait. It takes time.
It takes time. You
gotta let it develop.
And when you're getting your entire left side of your line that is just getting shoved into your lap, and I think that's what you saw again. Edge pressure is one thing, right? You can live with edge pressure because you can step up in the pocket. But when your left tackle is literally getting shoved into your lap, and then the left guard is just getting beat, there is nowhere else to go. And so I thought Philly did a great job. Again, fun little scheme that I think Fangio did, even though there was no blitzes. They would send the right side of their line. Whether that was Sweat, who played out there on the right side a lot, and then Jordan Davis or Carter. It was a lot of times it was Jalen Carter. They would have them rush a wide pass rush on the right side, basically telling Mahomes, you cannot get outside of the pocket going to the right side, right? We are going to rush a wide 9 technique and a wide 3. We are basically going to create an umbrella out there. And so where's the only place that Mahomes can bail after that? Well, he has to bail to the left side or step up in the pocket. Problem, the left side of the line of scrimmage was a French battlefield line that was just getting blown apart. And I thought that little scheme adjustment was so sneaky good on the part of Philadelphia. And even when Kansas City tried to give help. There were times where they would send a tight end or a back to help on one of the edges. They still got beat. It just was a piss poor execution on the part of Kansas City outside of the right guard and the center. And when that happens, I can sit up here and say, well, you should have tried this, you should have tried that. At the end of the day, if you were getting beat on your one-on-one matchups like that, unless you were to go back at the beginning of the game and just try something completely different, they were not prepared for what was coming from the Philadelphia defense.
Yeah, Fangio is a master.
Yeah.
And he proved that. And he's like Spagnuolo.
Yeah.
Spagnuolo's gotten a lot of love for their Super Bowl titles. Vic Fangio, I thought, should have been the damn MVP.
Well, and like Spagnuolo, he tried his hand at head coaching, didn't work for him, went back to DCing, and he's a legend.
But at the same time, he's got thoroughbreds everywhere.
Yes.
I mean that deep. So his game plan, genius. It's like, okay, well, we think we can rush with just our front four, and then Kansas City doesn't go downfield. They're not going to have time if we rush if we get there like we think we will. So therefore, we'll just we'll I guess the 2 picks are a great example of that, where the guy's just sitting right there waiting on the short passing game, and make Kansas City adjust to that, and they couldn't. You said one quick follow up. You said run the ball, and I think a lot of people were screaming at their TV. If you were rooting for the Chiefs, like, dude, you gotta run the ball. Like, you have to. Like, you can't. There's nothing else you can do really. Because Mahomes is going to die. He has nowhere to go. He doesn't have time. You have to open this up with the run. 11 carries, 49 yards for the Chiefs.
And most of those were Mahomes scrambles.
Yeah, and so they averaged 4.5 yards per carry, which isn't, I mean, that's not awful, but 11 carries, 49 yards. I want it because I'm only just now today, having come in and read the text line and talked to you and done the show and everything, seeing the correlation between that game and the Oregon Ohio State game in the Rose Bowl. I didn't think of that until I got in here, which is what some of the fun of doing this. And I look back because, first of all, the final score 40-22.
It's not indicative of what the game was.
Well, okay, but 40-22, Eagles over Chiefs. Ohio State over Oregon, 41-21.
Again, not indicative of how bad that ass kick was.
Exactly. It's kind of the same game.
The script was almost identical too. Huge shutout early. You poured on a little bit late.
So the Chiefs ended up running the ball 11 times for 49 yards. Like you say, when you're getting pounded like that on the offensive line, the defensive front is just overwhelming you. You have to run the ball, right?
Have to.
Dan Lanning. So I went and just checked while you were talking there how many times Dan Lanning ran the ball. So Andy Reid ran it 11 times. How many times did Dan Lanning run the ball in that game? Do you remember?
I'm guessing not a bunch.
No, I mean, Jordan James did almost nothing. I would say less than 20.
So 28.
28.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
but
they
don't
tried.
Those
but
Gabriel
you know how many
sacks
yards?
count? I think those Gabriel sacks count as so really 20. But
they got 8 sacks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they got 5 on Mahomes.
Those
didn't
don't count in the NFL.
in the NFL they don't. Oh, okay, gotcha. So yeah, maybe it's a little misleading. But you know how many yards they had, Oregon? Minus 23. There's the sacks. But 28 carries, minus 23 yards for Oregon. 11 carries, 49 yards for the Chiefs.
And I get it. Once you get to a certain point, when you're down, same Oregon, you get down 20. It's hard to stay balanced. But this is why.
But you got to try. You have to.
You have to. This, especially early on. I guarantee Andy Reid goes back today and goes, my game plan was crap. When you tell yourself, this is why people are like, oh, why does it matter playing under center? And you hear all the time, right? Marrying the run game to your pass game. Like when you become one-dimensional and you have to live in the shotgun and just say, this is what we're going to do, and you're telling the defense, this is what you're going to do, you are setting yourself up to fall into a really bad trap and a really bad pattern when you're physically getting beat. And that was Kansas City. And that was the weird part, is that I'm telling you, this belief that this was out of hand early on, that is not true. The Kansas City defense was playing well enough. It really wasn't until the turnovers. Like,
one of them was a pick six.
One of them was a pick six.
And there was another one where he turned it over on the
30
5-yard line.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's just like,
so there's 2 of them right there.
Kansas City's defense was doing enough in that first half to keep them in the game. It's just that the offense put them in such horrendous. By the way, Philadelphia's starting field position all game, 43-yard line. And then the turnovers, it just was a killer. You can't have 1 first down and 23 yards in the half. So I actually feel bad for the Kansas City defense that's getting ripped apart, and I don't think the Kansas City defense should be shouldering the blame. I actually think the Kansas City defense played well enough for them to win or be in this game if the offense held up their end of the bargain, and certainly they did not.
Well, you saw the time of possession indicating that too. Like they could not get their defense off the field.
No. Well, think about it.
Well,
So
they had at least 3 penalties I can remember where they gave them first downs on third down.
This is what I'm saying. The first touchdown was because of the worst.
Terrible penalty.
I mean, it's just awful.
But so was the A.J. Brown penalty.
So was the A.J. Brown one, so maybe that was a gimme, right? But they got their touchdown off of that, which shouldn't have been.
Because it was third down.
Yes.
So they stopped him. They were going to hold him to a field goal.
Yes.
Or maybe even a punt. I don't remember where exactly.
I forget if it would have been that. But they would have held him to at least an attempt at a field goal, if not a punt. And then they got the interception on Hurts because they heated him up and he went full Jalen Hurts. And then they held and they stiffened to a field goal. And then came the pick six, and all of a sudden it's 17-0. And even after that, they still forced Philadelphia then to punt. And so it was like they were hanging in there right until, again, the second touch, the next pick. And then
that was the killer.
And they got it to him on whatever the 6-yard line or whatever the hell it was.
And they shoved it in.
And then they shoved it in, and then it's 24-0, and the game was over. But that first half was not a bad half of football for the Kansas City defense. It was the worst half of football you could possibly play on offense. In fact, it might be the worst performance for a Mahomes-like character in the first half of a Super Bowl ever.
It's got to be. They had 3 carries for 3 yards in the first half.
Yeah.
Mahomes had 2 interceptions, one of them pick 6, and 33 passing yards. I mean,
it's unbelievable.
You think you can go back and find a worse half?
And I feel like they probably had the ball for 5 or 6 minutes because they just couldn't stay on the field offensively.
Yeah, they said that they have only punted. I saw somebody on social media pointed out that I think there was only 3 other times that they had punted on their first 3 drives of a game since 2018.
Yeah.
They just never, never happens to them.
No. And Kansas City will be fine. I mean, I think, again, we're now into the Phillies a dynasty and Kansas City's done. There's a blueprint, whatever. Kansas City is going to have to go back because I'm telling you, the last 2 years, there has been signs of this. There has been the makings of a collapse like this. They just always find a way to get out of it. And I don't even know if this collapse is indicative. Like you said, if they played 10 times, you can't tell me that they all go like this. This may have just been one played the best game they've played all year and one played the worst game. But I do think that Kansas City is going to have to go back and take a long, hard look. And they've been very good at retooling and changing over their roster, but there will have to be significant changes that are made this offseason if Kansas City wants to get back. And we're also seeing why teams don't win 3 Super Bowls in a row. It's really freaking hard because eventually the cracks in the armor really bust wide open, or you just happen to play a stinker, or you run into a damn buzzsaw.
I was going to say, yeah, just the latter there. It's like you just run into a team that freaking played that was the best game the Eagles will ever play.
If you play the best roster in the NFL, and I know this is going to sound crappy, but it's true, and I don't care if, people can yell and scream me all they want. The biggest weakness on the Philadelphia team is their quarterback. But what did we say? When their quarterback plays well, it's the best team in football, and it's not really close. And in the last 2 games, the biggest games of his life, he has played lights out. And when that happens, maybe you just have to shrug your shoulders and go, my God, that's the best team in football when he plays like that. Because Hurts was great.
He was great. He was perfect. He's perfect for their system, too.
Yes.
He's not, obviously
he can't carry you,
Mahomes, but he's really good for what they've built.
Yes.
And yes, 95 points in the last 2 games. In the last 2 games.
Yeah. Yeah. And only 1 or 2 Jalen Hurts moments.
Pretty nasty. All right.
And by the Jalen Hurts moments, I mean under pressure. And he tried a couple times. Every time he backs up like 15 yards on those scrambles, you're like, oh my God, here it comes. But it didn't kill him.